When Joan Crawford died in 1977, everyone in Hollywood was very sad. They had lost a huge star. She had started with nothing and became one of the most powerful women in movie history. But behind all the fancy dresses and perfect pictures, there was a different story no one knew about. In the weeks after she died, when people opened her house and read her will, her family and fans found some really disturbing things. What they discovered left not just her kids, but everyone in the movie business shocked in ways that would bother them for many, many years. Joan Crawford's life was never easy, and maybe that's why her death would make people so interested and upset. She was born with the name Lucille Fay LeSueur on March 23, 1904, though some papers say 1905 or 1906, in San Antonio, Texas. She was born into a really hard life. Her father left the family right after she was born, leaving her mother alone to take care of Joan and her older brother. By the time she was just 11 years old, she was already working as a laundress, washing other people's clothes. Her hands got rough and sore from all the soap and water, and her body had to do work that no kid should ever have to do. When she was 12, her life changed forever in a scary way. She tried to jump onto a car that was moving and ended up cutting her foot really badly on broken glass. The cut was so bad that the doctors even thought about cutting off her whole leg. After 3 different surgeries, she got better, but the scary experience gave her a lifelong fear of getting infections. That fear would turn into an obsession with being super clean that became part of who everyone thought she was. Later, it would also show the darker, scarier side of her private life. Because she wanted so badly to escape being poor, she quit school early and put all her energy into dancing. By the early 1920s, she was performing in shows in Chicago and then in New York using the stage name Billy Casson. People who worked for movie studios noticed how striking she looked and how hard she worked. In 1925, a big movie company called MGM gave her a contract that paid her $75 every week. The studio also gave her a brand new name, Joan Crawford. This was the beginning of her transformation into one of the biggest movie stars of the golden age of Hollywood. She became famous really fast and didn't stop working. In a movie called Our Dancing Daughters, she showed what the fun, carefree girls of the jazz age were like, dancing in scenes until her feet actually bled. She wouldn't stop until every take was absolutely perfect. By the early 1930s, everyone knew her name. She was just as famous as other huge stars like Greta Garbo and Norma Shearer. In her movies, she played women who fought their way from being poor to being rich. Stories that were just like her own journey from being a laundress to being Hollywood royalty. But even though she was doing great in public, Crawford's private world was much more fragile. She felt insecure, her marriages kept breaking up, and she controlled her home and family in very strict ways. By the mid-1930s, Joan Crawford was definitely one of MGM's biggest stars. Her roles in movies like Grand Hotel and Sadie McKee really connected with people watching, especially during the Great Depression when lots of families were struggling. She usually played working-class women who succeeded through hard work and never giving up, which was basically her own life story. This made her an inspiration to tons of women who were facing real problems in their own lives. But behind all the success, there were problems brewing. Crawford's rivalry with Norma Shearer was famous. Shearer was married to an MGM executive named Irving Thalberg, so she often got the best movie roles. Crawford bitterly said, "How can I compete with Norma when she's sleeping with the boss?" But even with this unfair disadvantage, Joan's films often made more money at theaters than Shearer's did. Her rivalry with Greta Garbo was different. While Garbo seemed mysterious and distant and elegant, Crawford was relatable and direct and never stopped working. Regular people watching movies during the Depression, people who felt invisible and unimportant, saw themselves in Joan Crawford. Her personal life was way less stable. Her first marriage was to Douglas Fairbanks Jr. in 1929. It ended after just 4 years because of cheating and because his family rejected her. Her second marriage was to an actor named Franchot Tone in 1935. This marriage had passion but also violence and heartbreak, with rumors of abuse and fights in public. She got married a third time to actor Philip Terry in 1942, and together they adopted a son, but she later changed his name to Christopher after they got divorced. Since she couldn't have biological children of her own, Crawford decided to adopt. In 1940, she adopted Christina, her first daughter, through someone called a baby broker. This was because California law back then didn't allow single women to adopt officially. Over the next few years, she adopted 3 more children, Christopher and twin girls named Kathy and Cindy. To the public, everything looked perfect, a glamorous Hollywood star with a beautiful family. But privately, things were starting to fall apart. As the 1930s came to an end, her career started having problems. In 1938, she was called box office poison, which was a terrible insult that humiliated even the biggest stars. But Joan refused to give up. Her determination would lead to an amazing comeback in the 1940s, one that brought her career back to life. But it also made the difference even bigger between the powerful star that everyone admired and the troubled woman her children knew at home behind closed doors. In 1943, after almost 20 years at MGM, Joan Crawford's career hit a really bad point. She used to be treated as one of the studio's most valuable stars, but now she was only being offered weak, boring roles. She kept getting passed over for parts she really wanted. When the lead role in Madame Curie went to Greer Garson instead of her, Joan decided she'd had enough and walked away. At the age of 37, in a move that many people thought would end her career forever, she paid $100,000 to break her MGM contract. But Crawford's instinct for survival was really sharp. Just 2 days later, she signed a huge deal with Warner Brothers, earning $500,000 for 3 films, an absolutely enormous amount of money at the time. Even more importantly, she got the right to approve which scripts she would do, a special privilege that very few actresses had. For over a year, she said no to every role, just waiting for the perfect project to come along. That risky gamble paid off big time in 1945 with a movie called Mildred Pierce. The film was a dark drama about a mother who sacrifices everything to provide for her ungrateful daughter. Joan fought really hard for that part, even agreeing to do a screen test, which was a humiliating thing for a star of her level to have to do. But she won the role, and with it, she got her redemption. Her performance amazed audiences and movie critics alike, and she won the Academy Award for Best Actress, even though she famously accepted the Oscar from bed, claiming she was sick. Her victory was undeniable. At 40 years old, she was once again the Queen of Hollywood, but winning that big award didn't make her demons go away. Joan kept pushing herself hard, starring in movies like Humorsk and Possessed. The latter movie got her another Oscar nomination. She was really good at playing women under strain, lonely, obsessive, often self-destructive characters that reflected parts of her own life. In the 1950s, with a movie called Sudden Fear, she earned her 3rd Oscar nomination, proving she could still be a powerful actress even in middle age. But off-screen, her personal world was falling apart. She married Alfred Steele, who was the CEO of Pepsi Cola, in 1955. After his sudden death in 1959, she threw herself into working for the company, even serving on its board of directors. Meanwhile, her drinking got worse and worse. Vodka became what she drank in the morning, and the people she worked with whispered about bottles she hid in Pepsi cans. At home, her children later said that the more she drank, the more volatile and controlling she became. By the 1960s, her career changed again. A movie called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane put her together with her bitter rival Bette Davis in a creepy story about two aging sisters who were falling apart. The film brought her career back, but the feud behind the scenes became legendary, with accusations of sabotage and cruelty flying back and forth. Joan acted in more horror movies, including Straight Jacket and Trog, but by then the power she once had was gone. Withdrawn, and with her health getting worse, she retired quietly in the mid-1970s. When she died on May 10, 1977, at 73 years old, the public expected a graceful goodbye to a Hollywood icon. Instead, what happened next would be one of the most shocking estate controversies in movie history. When Joan Crawford's will was read in 1977, it didn't match the image of the devoted, loving mother she had shown to the public for so long. Her estate, which was worth around $2 million, and over $10 million in today's money, was divided up in a way that shocked Hollywood. Two of her 4 adopted children, Kathy and Cindy, were given trust funds of $77,500 each and got to inherit personal belongings, including the Oscar she won for Mildred Pierce. Charities that Crawford cared about, like the American Cancer Society and the Muscular Dystrophy Association, also got substantial gifts. But the real shock came in one cold, cruel sentence. With formal legal language and the sting of a personal attack, the will said, "It is my intention to make no provision herein for my son Christopher or my daughter Christina, for reasons which are well known to them." It was a public and permanent act of rejection. The decision stunned not only her children, but the entire movie industry. Christina, the daughter who would later write a book called Mommy Dearest, had been Crawford's public companion for years. They were often photographed together in what looked like a loving bond. Christopher, who was adopted in 1943, had also grown up in the shadow of Crawford's fame. To see their names completely cut out of the will was more than just losing money. It was a final act of rejection and abandonment. Christina and Christopher didn't waste any time in fighting the will in court. They argued that their mother had been mentally unfit when she signed it. They pointed to her years of heavy drinking, her crazy mood swings, and possible pressure from Kathy and her husband. The case dragged on through the courts for a long time, pulling very personal family matters into the public eye. Family tensions that Crawford had kept hidden during her lifetime were now splashed across newspaper headlines. In July 1979, after nearly 2 years, the case ended in a settlement. Christina and Christopher each received $55,000, which was just a tiny fraction of the estate. The pay-out gave them some acknowledgement, but it didn't heal anything. The bitterness stayed, and it got even worse when Christina published her memoir, which painted Joan as an abusive and controlling mother. For many people, the will had already confirmed what the book claimed. The carefully created image of Crawford as a perfect mother had been a complete lie. But the controversies didn't end with just dividing up the money. As the people who were managing her stuff began to sort through her home and belongings, they found disturbing and puzzling items that made the mystery of who Joan Crawford really was even deeper. The way Joan Crawford's estate was divided up was shocking enough, but the physical things found inside her homes added an even darker, more unsettling layer to her story. When relatives, staff members, and company executives began to go through her belongings, they found things that completely contradicted the polished, perfect image Crawford had shown to the world for decades. One of the most disturbing discoveries was a collection of doll heads. Some were carefully arranged on shelves, while others were packed away in boxes without any bodies attached. To people looking at them, it looked grotesque and almost evil. For those who remembered Christina's claims in Mommy Dearest, about her mother's obsession with control and perfection. The doll heads became a haunting symbol. They seemed to represent the way Crawford tried to shape and mold the people in her life, especially her children, into flawless, silent versions of what she wanted them to be. There were also all the locks. Crawford's apartments and closets were filled with unusual, heavy-duty locks that went way beyond what most normal homes would need. Many closets, and even guest rooms, were sealed shut with bolts and latches. To some people, it suggested a woman who was desperate to hide her possessions or her secrets. To others, it echoed Christina's claims that Crawford would lock her children up as punishment, keeping them shut away until they obeyed her. Evidence found in Christopher's former bedroom made this story even stronger. There were deep scratches scarred into the inside of the door, as if someone had been clawing at it, trying desperately to get out. Some people believed these marks came from Christopher himself when he was locked inside as a boy. Even though skeptics argued the scratches could have been caused by something else, the imagery was absolutely chilling, and it lined up too closely with Christina's accounts to just ignore. Then came the discovery of a secret safe. Inside were financial records, private letters, and photographs. Among them, according to reports, were images of Crawford in moments that were far removed from her controlled public image, compromising photos, sometimes chaotic ones, snapshots of a life that clashed completely with the starched, perfect glamour she always insisted upon. There were also letters hinting at feuds, scandals, and conflicts she never talked about, including unsent notes to Christina that suggested Crawford struggled with guilt and resentment right until the very end. Together, all these discoveries painted a picture not of a glamorous legend, but of a woman whose private life was locked away, both literally and figuratively. And as if the will and the possessions weren't unsettling enough already, the legacy of Crawford's estate soon took an even stranger turn with rumors of hauntings that refused to die. After Joan Crawford's death, the mysteries surrounding her estate didn't just stay confined to legal battles and locked safes. Soon, whispers of paranormal activity started surrounding the properties she had lived in, especially her famous Brentwood mansion that was known as El Jodo. The house had once been a glittering symbol of Hollywood excess, a place where famous stars like Clark Gable, Marlene Dietrich, and Barbara Stanwyck would mingle at elaborate, fancy parties. But in the decades after Crawford moved out, its reputation shifted from being glamorous to being haunted. The stories began in the late 1970s and grew throughout the 1980s. Families who lived in the house after Crawford reported eerie occurrences, cold spots appearing out of nowhere, strange noises that couldn't be explained, and objects moving without anyone touching them. Some people described hearing disembodied voices in the middle of the night, or the sound of a typewriter clicking away in Crawford's old study long after her death. Most chilling of all were reports of a woman's ghostly figure drifting across the staircase or appearing in a white gown near the bedroom where Crawford had once slept. The nursery, where her adopted children had lived when they were young, became a particular focus of fear. Guests claimed they heard faint crying coming from the room when no one was in there, while others felt an overwhelming sense of sadness the moment they entered. Paranormal investigators who visited the house in the 1980 concluded that the house held residual energy from the star's volatile relationships with her children. Some even speculated that Crawford's fierce control and obsession with cleanliness had left a psychic imprint that was too strong to just fade away. The haunting seemed to extend beyond just the walls of El Jodo. Items that were sold at auction after her death carried their own eerie stories. Mirrors and pieces of furniture were said to give off unsettling energy. One buyer claimed to see an unfamiliar woman's reflection staring back at them from a mirror, even though no one else was in the room. For many people, it was as if Crawford's presence clung to her possessions, unwilling to release the tight grip she had held over her world when she was alive. These ghost tales may never be proven to be true, but they speak to the enduring unease surrounding Joan Crawford's legacy. Her will revealed bitterness and rejection. Her belongings suggested secrets and obsessions. And the ghost stories only amplified the sense that she could not rest in peace. Whether or not you believe in the paranormal, Crawford's estate became just as infamous as her career. An unsettling reminder that behind Hollywood's brightest lights can lurk shadows that never truly fade away. Joan Crawford built her entire life on discipline, control, and constantly reinventing herself, but in death, her secrets spilled out in ways she could no longer manage or control. From the shocking exclusions in her will to the disturbing discoveries found in her home, her legacy remains one of Hollywood's most tragic and haunting tales. Do you think Joan Crawford's choices were a reflection of a cruel nature? Or were they the scars of a life spent fighting just to survive? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories from the hidden side of Hollywood.